So, Preston, you wanted to you hit me up and you're like, I have a great topic, and it's about all the interesting adventures that happen off screen.
Yeah, so this is an article from a site I really liked, especially during Game of Thrones, called thefundamentals.com. The author is Cailin, and they had some just really funny stuff when Game of Thrones was on, and I would always.
This was the show or book?
The
or
show. They're big book fans, and they hated the show, and they had really funny podcasts, and so I would listen to them pretty religiously. They were not fans of me, but I was big fans of them.
What did you do?
Yeah, I don't know. They once trashed me in a podcast, saying that I was harmful to the discourse of the community or something. But it doesn't affect my feelings for them. I really loved their stuff. They're really intelligent, insightful, and funny.
That's a very adult way to look at it too. I would say fuck you, but there you go. Harmful discourse of the how dare they?
Yeah, it was fine. But they had this one really hilarious article that I remember reading years ago, and it popped into my mind, and I thought this would be a fun topic, actually. So I want to talk about how, there are some really awesome adventures. This is the premise of the article. There are all these awesome adventures that would have been really cool had they been on screen. And so, but instead, they were all kind of just done off screen. And so these are a few. Some of them are more absurd than others. So we'll start with the honorable mention of something that happens off screen that would have been really cool. And that is Brienne unlocking Moat Cailin's secrets.
Wait, what the fuck?
So do you remember when Brienne and Podrick have to go north, and they pass by Moat Cailin, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, we're going to have to go around Moat Cailin. And so they just take a different route. But this, of course, is a major plot point, that Moat Cailin is this incredibly strategic place. There's an entire episode. It's more important in the book, but in the show, there's Theon has to be brought in to take Moat Cailin back from the Ironborn. And so
I was under the impression that it's treacherous to go through with a giant army, but two people could get past it just fine.
I mean, maybe. This is the question: is how much of a goof is it? I mean, it was very clearly established in the show, even in the show, that as long as the Ironborn hold Moat Cailin, the Bolton armies are trapped in the south. Yeah, and so this is something very established, but somehow Pod knew the path to get around, because they get there and they're like, oh, we can't go through Moat Cailin. And they're like, oh, but to go around would take miles. And they're like, well, we're going to have to do that. Wait, Podrick, some rando knows how to get around Moat Cailin? Why doesn't the Bolton army? And can't they go single file? If you're like, okay, maybe it's a really thin path, go single file. It's a pretty big goof. It would have been kind of interesting to know how they went around and what was so important.
Okay.
I mean, this is just outside of the fact that Howland Reed and the Krennic men and all of this stuff is just kind of left a mystery. One of the other exciting ones, number 10, is the Lannisters sacking Highgarden.
That fucking annoyed me. Not only did Highgarden and Casterly Rock look like utter shit, they just look like random castle from random medieval whatever. But to not have the sea, I guess you could argue that there was a whole battle scene with the Unsullied and the Lannister guardsmen at Casterly Rock, and they didn't need to show another one, but I kind of wanted to see the Knights of Summer, as Catelyn called them, kind of fight. Yeah. I wanted to see the Reachmen fight, and insult to wound, the whole Olenna asked Jaime, How did we do? You guys were right. Why?
What? You're a huge army. That was established how important their army was to Renly, and why Renly was defeating Stannis is because he had the Tyrells, and the fact that it's boiled down to the fact that they have a bad sigil, I think, is you remember that?
Yeah.
It is a little anticlimactic. You're expecting a big battle between these big forces. The Tyrells and the Lannisters have been rivals for season after season after season. And you're finally getting to this point where they're coming head to head, and then there's nothing.
It would have made more sense if, like, Randall Tarley somehow was able to get the gates open because he knew a guy who worked in there. Something like that, you know?
Right,
because
he was
some
using
of the Reach Lords...
his knowledge of the South, you know?
Right.
Yeah, he had connections.
Like, it would make sense if... Because some of the Reach Lords did defect to Cersei's side, but that always bothered me.
So number 9 is Tyrion and Bronn set up their meeting. Do you remember in season 7, Tyrion and Jaime meet beneath the Red Keep, and the meeting is set up by Bronn?
Mm-hmm.
So, but if you remember, the last time Tyrion saw Jaime, he was riding into Dragonfire and then falls off his horse and plunges down to the bottom of a lake. And then everyone leaves, presumably because they thought Jaime was dead. And Jaime secretly sneaks out of the lake with Bronn.
Wait, so Tyrion sees this?
Well, no, Tyrion didn't see him sneak out of the lake, right? Like,
okay,
why?
Right.
Right. So why would Tyrion would have needed to call up, somehow get a message to Bronn somehow to ask for a meeting with a brother that he should think is dead. So, like, how is this communication even happening? It's such a weird kind of thing to think about.
That one, I will argue, that one not as weird. You could also argue he sent a raven, I guess. Sent a raven, fuck it.
I mean, I guess he sent a message like, "Hey, Bronn, how's it going?" And Bronn's like, "Oh, by the way, your brother's alive." Really? That's cool. And then later, when he wants to set up the meeting, he's like, "Oh, by the way, can you have a meeting with me and Jaime?" I guess. Number 8 is the Unsullied's trek across Westeros without any supplies.
Yeah, that because if they're taking Casterly Rock, then that means they would have to leave. Maybe towards the Riverlands, which has been burned to the ground like 40 times at this point.
Yeah.
Unless they're going square south, which they would come across some of the Reach Lords, maybe.
Right. I mean, but that's a lot of adventures, right? It's either a lot of adventures of them plundering people that have been plundered a million times.
Yeah.
Or them coming up with like really clever ways. Like they all went fishing and got fish and then did, how did they, because it's weeks. It's weeks to cross from marching to go from Casterly Rock to King's Landing. And they have no supplies. Their ships have been burned. And Casterly Rock was abandoned. So, I mean, I'm not saying it's impossible, but I would love to figure out how they did it. Like maybe they went to maybe they sacked some other stuff in the Westerlands, and then really got everything together and got supply trains established.
Attacked some other castles along the way.
Yeah, but that's a really great story. I think it's possible, but it's just, when they do show up, they're just all in their armor, standing there, like no supply trains, like nothing, no camp followers. They just like marched how they were. I
love how you and the fundamentals are just like really thinking hard in this. What's number 7?
On number 7 is Theon getting to the Iron Islands.
Yeah, what the fuck is that? What? So he leaves her. No, he doesn't leave her. So they're in the forests of Winterfell, and then, if I recall correctly, it's been a minute since I've seen the show, since season 7. Or no, was that 6? That was 6. I hated 6. They encounter Brienne, who saves both him and Sansa, and then Brienne is going to take her to the wall. So if you look at the map of the North...
I mean, first of all, it doesn't make sense that Theon, who, went through a lot to rescue Sansa, just hands her over to a complete fucking stranger. Who the fuck are you? Oh yes, I'm Brienne of Tarth. I'm sworn to protect you. What?
So he would have to go So the forest outside Winterfell, so he would have to go through the Wolf's Wood.
Yeah.
Either he'd have to go south towards Torrance Square, maybe, or at one point he'd have to go to the Stony Shore, or maybe the Rills.
So one point that's also made is that Theon in no way should trust Brienne because he's actually been in this exact situation before, right? He escaped Winterfell and then was brought by a stranger, trusted a stranger, and then that stranger turned out to be working for Ramsay, and it was a double cross to fuck with Theon's mind.
Oh,
remember?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Right? So, like, he should be fully expecting that Brienne is actually an agent of Ramsay and that they're fucking with him.
Funny enough, the same thing happened, I believe it was season 4, when his sister comes to get him and he thinks it's a trick. So
yeah, you're absolutely right. That's a good point. There is every reason he should be thinking Brienne is a plant. He's never met Brienne before. It's ridiculous that he'd hand over Sansa to her.
Mm-hmm.
But whatever. And then somehow getting to the Iron Islands, like how he does this walk. He's got no horse.
That he would take him a month? Maybe it took Robert and the royal progression a month, maybe 2 to get up to
maybe
Winterfell?
she did. Maybe Sansa did give him a horse at least. I think maybe he got a horse.
From who?
I think maybe some dead guards. Maybe some dead guards.
I think they came after him with dogs. I don't think there were horses. Maybe.
Or maybe, I don't know. I have to watch the scene again to see where the horses come from.
The funny thing is, they actually say this many times, how the North is just big. It's larger than the other realms combined.
It's all the other kingdoms combined.
Right. So, if you look up a Song of Ice and Fire and you look up the North map, and if they don't get obviously very far from Winterfell, and so they're clearly in the Wolf's Wood at least.
Yeah.
There's no way he's able to go.
Right. I mean, we know that to Deepwood Moat, we know from the book that they kind of thought it was a 2-week trip. Mm-hmm. And then it ends up being because of the snow, 2-month trip, right? But yeah, that it's a 2-week trip to, well, I guess that would be a march. So maybe on horseback, he could get there in a week. He could get to Deepwood Moat in a week. But that's still a good week. And then he gets to Deepwood Moat, and he's got a hope that he can find a ship that's going to take him to the Iron Islands. I don't know how he would he doesn't have any money or anything.
The funny thing about that is this is right after they kill Miranda, and Sansa goes to the Wall for safety, and then Ramsay knows she's there, and of course Ramsay is going to tell all the other lords, be on the lookout for fucking Theon, and they're going to know Theon.
Absolutely. Right. Theon used to travel with Ned. So Theon's been to every location in the North with Ned.
Right, and keep in mind that at this point in the show, the Glovers at Deepwood Moat, they are still somewhat loyal to Ramsay. There's a whole scene.
Sansa has a whole problem. Right. Mm-hmm. I mean, maybe he goes to Torrance Square. I mean, if they had established it like in the book, he could go to Torrance Square and Cleftjaw would be there, but Cleftjaw is dead in the show and a completely different character. Mm-hmm. And they never took Torrance Square, so I don't know.
Yeah, there's just okay. We're focusing on this way too much. But what's the next?
I know, right? But that would be a story. That would be a great story.
A what if?
Yeah, a whole nother episode. The number 6 is the escape from the Harpy pit. So remember when the Harpies attack and are killing everybody in the pit, mm-hmm. and then Dany jumps on her dragon and flies away.
It just leaves everybody behind.
It just leaves everybody else behind. And everyone's like, oh, maybe all the Harpies are dead at that point. It's no, you can actually see in the scene as she's flying away that the Harpies are still running around killing everybody. Like Drogon did not burn them all. They definitely were still doing stuff. And how everybody else survived. I mean, I guess Jorah and Dario fought their way out, and some Unsullied, but that's still a fight.
Maybe they held off until Unsullied reinforcements could get to the arena.
Yeah, but it's still something you would like to see like on screen. They just kind of stare up at the air.
Playing that theme song you fucking hate.
I fucking hate that inspirational theme song. Yes, as her hair doesn't blow at all in the wind. Yeah.
Wait, it doesn't blow at all in the wind?
Well, I mean, it's like a little bit, but it's like if you're going at that speed, like on a dragon, like your hair is just gonna be crazy, right?
Of course.
So yeah, I mean, I think that the one's possible. I think that's one's very possible, knowing that the kind of OP skills of Daario and Jorah. But we'd like to see it.
I'd like to think that they're not that overpowered, and that the Unsullied from over there came over and reinforced the guards who got overrun at the pit. I like to think.
Yeah. So number 5 is Arya living as Walder Frey for 2 weeks at the Twins.
This one I'm not even fucking touching. This one's so dumb. I'm not even anything Arya I'm not touching. I know better.
I mean, because she has to like sleep in bed with her child bride. She has to like do all of the regular things that lords do, dealing with the books, talking to people, like for 2 weeks, pretending to be this, 80-year-old man. I mean, that would have been kind of funny.
I'm not even touching the ridiculousness of this. I'm not even touching it.
All right. Number 4, the Blackfish retaking Riverrun. That would have been incredible.
I thought the Tullys always held Riverrun.
In the books, they always held Riverrun.
In the show? When was Riverrun taken in the show?
Off screen, Sansa just says that her Blackfish has retaken Riverrun. And that he has forces that might help them. And so she sends Brienne down there to like beg for forces.
I don't remember this at all. Wow, that's such a throwaway fucking line.
So in the show, the Blackfish stays behind as Castellan. In the book, the Blackfish stays behind as Castellan and is not at the Red Wedding. In the show, the Blackfish goes to the Red Wedding and then takes a piss.
Yeah.
And somehow escapes and gets out. And he escapes by himself as everybody else is slaughtered, or gathers whatever survivors, and then somehow takes Riverrun, which is one of the hardest to take strongholds in the Seven Kingdoms. It specifically said that you have to like do this secret thing of taking it from 3 sides and all of this simultaneously and all this. But he does it. We don't know where he gets his forces from. We don't know how he defeats the Freys, but he somehow retakes the castle.
You could argue that because he was born there, he knows the secret passages, just like Bran and then the tunnels beneath Winterfell.
No, absolutely. I think that's it. I think it's completely within the realms of possibility because that he knows the castle. But still, it would be nice to have seen such an incredible fight.
It'd be nice if they didn't fuck us over and kill his ass off screen. That was so fucking dumb.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Yeah, like everything exciting with the Blackfish happens off screen.
Well, that's ridiculous. Like in a show where even the actors are like, "Ooh, I wonder how my character is gonna die." That has to be like the biggest amount of disrespect. As much as Dave and Dan hated the shit out of the Barristan Selmy actor, they still gave him a really cool death scene. Like he went out like a boss.
Yeah. Though he was still very, 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 very bitter because he had read the books and he was like, "Oh, Barristan is finally becoming interesting," and then he's like, "Damn it!" like he was really excited because he was like, "Oh, I don't like my character doesn't do anything until A Dance with Dragons," and then he's like getting really pumped about that, and then they fucking kill him off before his character can do any of the things he did in Dance. To be fair, though, George R.R. Martin never intended for Barristan to be that interesting. That was a mistake.
To be fair, George R.R. Martin never intended for Theon's chapters to be more interesting than Arya's, but here we are.
Fair enough.
Here we are.
Fair enough. You're right. He kind of hates on Theon in interviews. In fact, when I met him in person, he was hating on Theon, and he's like, all these people, they tell me that Theon is their favorite character, and I'm just like, oh God. You're screwed up. Like he's a dick. like I don't know. You made him like the most relatable character in the entire story, because he's so flawed. And we're flawed. We're all human beings, and that's why people like him. But number 3, the Sandsnakes pursue their cousin. So this is how the Sandsnakes got onto the ship with Trystane, right? Like somehow they watch his ship sail away, and somehow they get on another ship and like follow him and sneak onto his ship and kill him, in this incredibly secretive way. That would have been interesting to see, I suppose.
This one I would argue is a bit more boring. I'm assuming that's just exactly what happened. Once Marcella was dead, I believe for his safety, Jaime has Trystane stay on the boat. And then that's for how long extended period of time. I would have argued his ass should have been sailing back to Dorne for his safety because, Cersei.
It's funny though, because Trystane, the entire reason Trystane is on his ship is a little lucky. Like he's a guest of the crown. Like he very well could be inside, or being protected by Jaime, who was on the ship with Trystane and knew about the murder. Like Jaime from the get-go should be trying to protect Trystane, and yet somehow they're able to get him when he's alone. The minute Marcella dies, Trystane and Jaime are both clued into the fact that the Sandsnakes are evil, and they're going to try to take him out. So they know that Ellaria is up to no good, and so they send a warning to Doran, and Doran reads the warning and then is killed, right? But that means Trystane knew there was danger long before Doran. He knew because he knows at the same time as Jaime, minutes after Jaime knows. So he should be under full protection. He should be in King's Land. He shouldn't even be on the ship. He should be in the castle, under guard, protected. Certainly, he should be next to Jaime.
Now that I'm thinking about it, that would have been a much cooler scene than them sneaking on the ship and killing him that way. I would have loved to have seen them sneak into the Red Keep, maybe take out one of the Kingsguard, and then kill Trystane.
Yeah,
that would have
absolutely.
been a cool. The characters are still dumb, but that would have been a cool scene to go through.
Yeah, a better fight. In fact, they don't even give us a fight, right? He pulls out his sword and then they just stab him from behind, and you're like, oh, we were gonna see a badass fight, and then nothing. So number 2. See, I don't know about this one. So number 2 is the Septa Unella's extraction mission. So Septa Unella was following around Marjorie as her tail at 24/7. But at some point, she's kidnapped, and Marjorie doesn't notice that she's kidnapped and goes to the Sept to get blown up. And only at the Sept does she realize that something's weird. Shouldn't she know? Like, who secretly kidnapped Unella, and how did they do it so Marjorie didn't notice, and somehow make it so Marjorie didn't think there was danger? This is more of just a goof. I don't think it would be that interesting to see.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I suppose you just have, like, right before Marjorie is ready to go to the trial, some little birds like grab her or something, or Gregor Clegane grabs her. But that was her number 2. And then number 1 was Arya's meat pies, her in the kitchen. How ridiculous that is. It's kind of a mix. It's a mix of like stuff that like is certainly possible that would have been really cool to see. Like the Blackfish retaking Riverrun and the escape from the pit. Those are scenes that are not, or the Lannisters taking Highgarden. Like these are all things that are would have been really interesting to see. I it's not unbelievable that they happened. It's just would have been really interesting to see. And then some of them are bigger goofs, like the Unsullied trekking across Westeros, or everything Arya's doing, or Theon's warp. So it's kind of a couple different topics melded together, really, like big goofs and stuff that like would have been really cool to see, actually, because I can't believe you just like put that, like, didn't want to show us that the Blackfish retaking Riverrun, or how you got out of the Harpy pit.
I would have also argued I would have liked to have seen. I would have put this on the list, especially over number 2. The Brotherhood Without Banners versus the Mountains Men.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Actually, so many things with the Brotherhood Without Banners, like what they were doing, how they disappeared, where they went. Dario bringing peace to Slaver's Bay. I don't know. Yeah, a lot of transportation of armies. How Ilaria consolidated power in Dorne.
Yeah.
You know, I would have liked to see a few scenes on that. But what are you gonna do? John's trip back from Hardhome.
I was just thinking that, yeah.
You know, how Edmure got out of prison.
That I wanted to see. That I thought the Unsullied were gonna, like, there's a huge theory behind this that I was solely behind. I was hoping that was gonna go down, where as the Unsullied attacked Casterly Rock, they were going to release Edmure and some of the Riverland guys, and they were gonna help them, like, fight everybody. But I guess the guy was just busy doing other things, and they only wanted to bring him back for one cameo in the last episode.
Yeah, it's too bad. I mean, maybe there's budget. I don't know. I recently watched a video with the actor that played Spike from Buffy and Angel, talking about how, like, he was an actor and he negotiated some money for his contract, and then he kind of realizes that, like, because he negotiated more money, Charisma Carpenter, who played Cordelia, like, couldn't return, and then he realized, like, oh my god, like, had I maybe if I asked for less, we would have had her in the season, and things would have been different. But, you know, it's like he didn't know, and, you know, you've got to look out for yourself and your own salary and things like that. So it was some interesting things, you know, like, so much is determined by who you can get back for how much money.
It's a pretty interesting list. Some I'd take out, some I'd leave in, but overall, yeah. I can see this as something you and the fundamentals would obsess over.
It's pretty funny. I mean, some of them are just fun to think about. Like I hadn't put much thought into the Tyrion and Bronn situation. Like, oh yeah, that's, like, I knew it kind of didn't make sense that he could somehow contact Bronn, but the idea that he doesn't even know that his brother's alive and the logistics of that is mind-bending, like, weird. You're like, right, that's weird. Oh well.